Okay, we're going to talk about some little issues and some little aspects related to the theoretical framework and the literature review, if possible, okay? But I'm going to be focused just in the literature review. So I'm going to share right now my screen. Okay, and then we're going to talk about some little aspects about the literature review. Is this? Yes. The theoretical framework. Okay. Okay, if you have questions, let me know, right? So what is going to be the theoretical framework? I have looked information on slideshare.com in order for me to find a kind of summarized version of it. But also you can find this information inside the books that we have that we're managing right now, which is the one related to Creswell 2012 and what is the other one? Christensen and Bert Johnson 2014. Okay, so we're going to work on that. And well, nice. Okay, so what is going to be the fact related to the theoretical framework? As you can see over there in the window, in the screen. So read it, please.
What do you say?
Okay, have you read this? The information inside the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so in this case, what are you going to use? So in this part, you're going to explain the theory, right? Because this is going to help you to predict and understand the phenomena, right? Example, um, gender impact when learning, okay? So that is going to be the phenomena. So we're going to read information about the gender impact inside the foreign language learning or the language learning or learning in the end. Okay, for example, autonomous learning. So that is going to be the way in which we're going to work with that. Yeah, something like that. For example, anxiety, foreign language anxiety. So that is going to be the phenomenon, right? So in here, as we can see right here, in many cases to challenge and extend existing knowledge within the limits of the critical bounding assumptions. So in this part, this is going to be very, very, very important. So critical assumptions. So here we're going to base ourselves um, on the theory, right? Existing or created by some authors regarding to your topic of research, your research topic, right? And that's it. This right here is going to validate two things. Number one, we're going to validate the questions and we're going to validate the statement of the problem, right? So why? Because we need to predict or we need to understand right here the phenomena, right? So this is the way in which we're going to be focused related to the theoretical framework. What happened here? Okay. Now, it's just that this structure, the theoretical framework, is the structure that can hold or support a theory of a research study. So that is what we're going to work with this, right? The theoretical framework introduces and describes the theory, which explains why the research problem under study exists. So in this case, what we're going to do is to validate what I was telling you last term. We're going to validate the research problem and we're going to validate the questions, right? So with the theory, we're going to say, oh, there's a problem with autonomy, right? With autonomous learning. But who has talked about problems with autonomous learning? Who has talked about the way in which people learn or develop the communicative skills, right? So that is going to be the way in which we're going to work with this. Okay, so we're going to validate once again if this exists, right? So if it exists, we're going to continue working with this. If it doesn't exist, therefore we're going to create something new. But well, taking into account your research studies or research topics, I don't think we're going to create something new, right? Okay, moving on. Okay, so what is going to be the purpose for the research study, for the theoretical framework? So we have three ideas taken from Can, in which we're going to say that number one, it helps the researcher to see clearly the variables of the study, right? So when we're talking about, for example, the topic of Angelica, if I'm not wrong, and Angie, they talk about autonomous learning in order to foster the speaking skills, if I'm not wrong, right? I don't know if Angelica is connected right now. Well, anyway, so in this case, we're going to see the variables. Which are going to be the variables? Number one, autonomous learning. Number two, oral proficiency development, right? So for example, Lena, which are going to be your variables related to the what related to the theory?
I think difficulties
Mm-hmm.
and the speaking skill
Okay, so
proficiency.
now we're going to talk about speaking skills. That is going to be just number one. Is going to be the one of the key aspects that we're going to take into account for
Mhm.
this. So, for example, in order to talk about speaking skills, we're going to use Brown, if I'm not wrong, right? Brown 2001, because he talks about the communicative skills, right? All of them. So the oral, yeah, the oral competences, talks about written competences, whatever, right? Okay, and we're talking about the difficulties. So over there, we're going to find inside the theory if there are advantages and disadvantages when teaching and learning foreign language and developing the oral part, right?
Right.
Okay, what could be the other variable?
Mm,
This question goes to everybody, so I want you to think about that. Who's connected? So Lena, Alex, Gina, Junior, what else? Geraldine, Juan Carlos, and I thought, well, anyway,
teacher, maybe the space, the environment.
the environment. No, in this case, the environment is not going to be like that. Maybe, what is the name of your research, please? I forgot.
Um, I forgot also.
Hmm,
what
that,
what difficulties? No, what difficulties? It's like some what difficulties we can find while taking the Anglophone culture course.
okay, so
Uh,
now we're going to take into account, for example, the content inside the course. So we can talk about that. Or so we're going to take into account how culture is going to tell us, or is going to guide us, or is going to help developing their communicative skills focused on the oral part. Okay, so that could be one variable.
okay.
Alex, thank you, Lena. Alex, what could be your possible variables in your study? Alex or Gina, what could be the possible variables inside your study? So gender impact could be one. Um, so focused on the learning protocols, right? Or the learning skills, learning styles. So if we're going to talk about the learning styles, we can also talk about maybe um, multiple intelligences. So we're going to cite Gardner, right? So
Okay.
that could be like that. Okay, Gina, what could be other variables that you think, it doesn't matter if they're wrong or right. Now, what do you think it could be, or there could be the variables in your study?
Mm, I don't know.
You don't know. Well, doesn't matter. Okay. So your research is focused on gender impact.
Gender impact, yes.
Yes. And what is the other thing that you're focused?
Well, gender impact when learning a foreign language, when learning English as a foreign language.
Okay.
But we are analyzing the speaking skill.
Okay. So number one, speaking skill. Number two, learning styles. Number three, gender impact, right? So those are going to be your three main variables, okay? And then we're going to look for theory in order to validate that. Okay, Juan Carlos and Isabella, which could be your possible variables?
Well, according to the title,
Yes, according to the title, because remember, the title is going to be tied
uh,
with the general question and the grand tour question. Damn it, sorry.
yes.
With the general objective and the grand tour question. So the three of them, they create a triangle. So we work with that, okay?
Mhm.
So,
Well, for me, according to the title, will be the culture.
mm-hmm.
Culture.
Clash of
Also,
cultural clash, something like that. Clash of culture.
y
So
yes,
variable number one, culture.
yes.
So the
Culture.
cultural aspect when go on.
Well, another will be well, the effects of this culture on the acquisition of English.
Okay, sounds good. What else?
And
Once again, Juan Carlos, I cannot listen to you very
Uh,
loud.
Cultural differences.
Oh, the cultural differences. Okay, yes, the clash of cultures. So culture,
Yeah.
clash of culture. What Isabella was saying that I forgot.
the effects that could be affect or benefit the acquisition of English as a foreign language.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so those could be the possible the possible variables you have. Thank you so much, Sandra and Junior.
Teacher, maybe the anxiety and the achievement in oral productions.
Very good. So anxiety, oral skills
Oral
achievement,
Oral
production.
product
oral production achievement, right?
and
Very good.
factors.
What else?
Mm,
First, I think could be factors. Then, as Sandra said before, language anxiety, and the last one could be oral productions. And to validate is, how do you say before, valuables? We are going to
Variables.
focus variables. We are going to focus on several authors, but the main is Horwitz to validate the solution for this study.
Okay, so it works in that way. Okay, so all of you are right. So you're going to start creating your protocols, your variables. Okay, so that is going to be assignment number one, creating the variables. Number two, it can provide you with a general framework for data analysis. So you're going to analyze your data, but taking into account what? The theoretical framework, right? So if you're going to analyze the theoretical framework, right, is because, or sorry, if you're going to analyze the data here, the data analysis that is going to be for next semester, it is going to be just focused on this, right? There's going to be a straight relationship between the theoretical framework and the data analysis, right? Why? Because you're going to be focused on the questions too. And also you're going to be focused on the problem. So therefore, you're going to explain the problem, right? And based on the problem, you're going to try to answer the questions, but taking into account what? The theory, right? So when analyzing the data, you're going to say if the theory is adjusted to what you wanted to answer or not, or is answering something else. Got it?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Now, number 3, it is essential in preparing the research proposal using descriptive and experimental methods. Well, maybe not here experimental, but maybe descriptive, right? So we're going to focus ourselves on the description. We're going to describe the whole thing right here. So that's the issue we're going to take into account. Okay, very good. Now, the next one is going to be the theory provides a point of focus for attacking the unknown in a specific area. So here you're going to talk all over your project with unknown information or unknown data. So I'm going to research this because I don't know that. As I told you at the beginning of the semester, everything you think you're going to research, maybe the 95% of that, it has been researched, right? So people have researched about that. Therefore, what we're going to do is to what? To look for theories that are going to validate what we think, about what we wonder. Okay, and that's it. Then, if a relationship is found between two or more variables, a theory should be formulated to explain why the relationship exists. So, is there a relationship between anxiety and oral production? So, if it exists, we're going to use that theory, right? If it doesn't exist, we're going to link it. So, we're going to use theory A, anxiety, theory B, that is going to be oral production problems, right? And then we're going to mix them for us to create our own theory. So the theoretical framework right here is not going to be something like creating, no, copying and pasting some other's theory. No, it's going to be the way in which we're going to formulate or reformulate our own theory, right? So we're going to create our own theory related to our research topic. Got it? Okay, now let's continue with this. Why is this important? So we're going to talk about right here about concepts, right? We're going to talk about right here about concepts, right? We're going to talk about the definitions and the existing theory that are going to be used for our particular study or your particular study. That means that we're not going to say what is going to be the concept or the definition. No, we're going here to demonstrate the understanding of the theories and why these theories are relevant to the topic of your research paper, right? So we're not going to say, for example, what's the definition of anxiety? Okay, yes, you can use the definition of anxiety based on some authors. But after that, you're going to talk about the relevance of anxiety to your research project. Okay? Why? Because you're going to relate it, right? You're going to relate it to the broader fields of knowledge in the class you are taking, right? So, for example, the culture, right? And how this culture, course of culture is going to help students to develop the oral production or the oral proficiency related to the C1 level, right? So that is going to be the way in which we're going to mix this, the theory or the definition, inside our own project. Therefore, I need you to link the theory with the statement of the problem, right? And how the theory is relevant for the development of the project. Am I clear? Yes? No? Perhaps? Ask questions if you want. We have a question here. Okay, here. Could social impact be another thing related to the variables? Yes, could be social impact. Yeah, so we're going to talk about the social issues that men and women, or women and men, whatever you want to organize it, are going to what? Just to have, right? So, for example, what is the social impact that learning among women or learning among men could be, right? So I don't know. I'm not the expert in that field, so we need to look theory about that. Okay. So yes, it could be like that. Okay. Let's continue with the following one. Now,
Teacher,
yes.
so the variables must be in the title of the project, or we have to like look for another variable?
Now, the
Or
variables right here. Well, yes and no. The variables right here are going to be somehow inside the title, the objectives, and the questions. But mainly, they are going to appear inside the statement of the problem, right? So you're not going to focus yourselves on the theory inside the statement of the problem. No. So you're going to talk about some little aspects about that and waiting for a validation inside the theoretical framework. Once you're in the theoretical framework, you are going to what? To got it. You are going to start developing all of those variables, explaining that. Okay. Okay. Is that clear? Okay. Let's continue with this. So here, the theoretical framework is not something that is found readily available in the literature, right? So right here, what we need to take into account is the analytic way in which we're going to look for the theory, right? So you need to read a lot in order to set which are going to be the theoretical framework, right? So what is going to be the definitions and the concepts you're going to work on in order to validate the statement of the problem, right? Once you have that, you're going to start developing the whole process, right? Here, the theoretical framework strengthens the study in the following ways. So, an explicit statement of theoretical assumptions permits the reader to evaluate them critically, to act in more informed and effective ways, right? So, for us to understand the whole study. And that's it. So far, so good. That's going to be the importance of the theoretical framework. Okay. Now, how to strengthen the theoretical, no, in which way the theoretical framework is going to strengthen the study. So, number one, we're going to use theories for which are going to allow us or the reader to evaluate the study, right? Number two, we're going to connect this to existing knowledge, right? So, related to your research questions, we're going to say if they are possible, if they're reachable, or and if they're researchable, right? Number two, Number three, sorry. So we're going to articulate all the theory with the research study, right? With the questions in order for us to understand or to describe the phenomenon observed, right? And that's it. Number four, here you're going to see your boundaries. So until which point you want to analyze the data. So if it's going to be just um, foreign language anxiety based on oral production, so you're going to just analyze some little issues about the the oral production, that anxiety generated while producing something orally, right? So those are going to be the ideas you're going to take into account in order to analyze the data, right? And that's it. Number five, um, this part. So what we're going to do is to explain the meaning, the nature, and the challenges of this phenomenon, right? So that they have been experienced but unexplained in the world in which we live. So therefore, we're going to talk about the contributions we're going to give to the society with this study. Okay. Okay. So what or how are we going to create this theoretical framework? So number one, so you're going to introduce the theory in the study. Number two, in the introduction, you're going to review and the literature review, right? What else? So for example, the research questions, they are going to be included there, right? But mainly, this is going to be just described in that section, right? In the literature review section. Okay. This is an idea from Creswell, right? For us to start maybe a kind of introductory paragraph for one of the variables we're going to explain, right? Not to worry, I'm going to share this information later on. Okay. So let's see, for example, another idea related to one variable from one study. This is another idea, right? Well, this you could read it also. And well, so far so good. That is going to be the way in which we're going to use the theoretical framework. Okay. For you to start the theoretical framework, we can work with this mind map. Okay. So for us to say, for example, what is going to be the real the title, for example, and then the variables we're going to have in order for us to analyze it, right? So as we see right here, for example, the management of internal control system of millionaire multipurpose cooperative operating in region 1. So we have, for example, scientific management theory, number 1, behavioral management theory, number 2, contingency management theory, number 3, social management theory, number 4, and quantitative management theory. So we have 5 variables which are going to validate the research topic, as you see it over there. And well, so far so good. What is going to be the main importance of the theoretical framework? So number 1, we're going to take into account that this specifies the theory used as a basis for the study. Number 2, you're going to mention the proponents of the theory, right? You're going to mention the authors, you're going to mention studies, right? You're going to cite the main points emphasized in the theory, right? So therefore, if we're going to talk about anxiety, right? So anxiety is something that is going to be very broad, but we're going to take the most relevant issues or points that are going to help us answer the research question and help us validate our problem, right? Number 4, supports his exposition of the theory by ideas from other experts, what I have already explained. Number 5, illustrates the theoretical framework by means of a diagram. And finally, reiterates the theoretical proposition of the study. Questions? Someone is playing? Who's playing what? Okay. Anyway, let's continue. Okay. So we don't work with hypotheses, right? But you can read some of this. Well, we have finished this part. I'm going to create another space for the theoretical framework, I think, just 20 minutes, and then we'll finish this presentation. Okay, so I'm going to give you another link for you to join the following class in Zoom. And during the weekend, I'm going to record a full video about theoretical framework and what is the other thing? And that literature review. So I'm going to explain a little bit about the literature review. Yes?
And I would like to know how many papers do we have to include in this part?
Okay, I'm going to let you know. Okay, but time is almost over, so I'm going to give you